And then I stood up and I remember I looked right out this window in my room. I looked right out the window. I looked right at the moon. The moon was a full moon that night. It was shining right through. And I looked at it and I said, God, tell me what to do. Happy New Year's Eve, everybody. If you're here today, I'm excited because today what we're going to talk about is starting the new year. What's on everybody's mind, right? Some of you who are here might be extremely excited about 2022. You might have a resolution, you might have a plan, you might have a change that you're going to make, and you're very excited about that. And that's awesome if that's you. This video is going to be extremely helpful in making sure that you actually implement that plan, that you actually hit that goal, that you make the change you wanted to make for the reasons you really want to make them this year. You might be watching this video thinking, resolutions are crap. You know, people make resolutions all the time about New Year's like it's some special day, and then what happens is they maybe do it for 1 week or 2 weeks and then they quit, right? You might be cynical about New Year's. If that's the position you're in, I get it. I've been there too. I know what it's like to think, oh, these special days aren't that special. And in reality, the only special day is today. And that's a good place to be if that orientation is about making change now and present and in this moment. But it's not such a great place to be if it's a means of never making changes, because you've fallen down that path of cynicism, maybe had too many losses, too many failures, or not had enough direction or help when making changes, so that you just kind of gave up on it. And you know, that's normal if you're at that point in life right now, but this video will serve you too. Because what this is going to do is it's going to teach us what's been missing about making New Year's resolutions. It's going to teach us that the way we've been making our New Year's resolutions for most of our life, they're not actually resolutions. They're small goals or they're lifestyle changes. And those are great. But what you're going to learn in this video, if you stay with me, because this is going to be a longer video, I'm going to really walk you through how to change your life in 1 minute. How to change your life with one really important decision. And then I'm going to lay out a framework for you so that you can actually make those lifestyle changes. You can actually, hit those concrete resolutions that you have for the year as well, or maybe give you the tools necessary to set some of those goals for the year as well. And so the first thing I want you to stay with me, because what I'm going to show you is that what we've been taught about making resolutions, no. Most of that, it's not right. It's not helpful. In fact, it's often hurtful and harmful, and it's often the reason that we're back in this place every single year. You got to pull back and ask yourself, why is it so difficult for me to make the changes that I want to make in my life? Why is it so difficult for me to stick to a workout schedule? So difficult for me to just be a nicer, kinder person when that was my resolution? What's getting in the way of that? And I'm going to show you what that is. I'm going to walk you through what that is. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a personal development psychologist. I live my life at the intersection of practical personal development. You might think people like, Tony Robbins or Brendon Burchard, or people who live their entire life helping people make behavior change. I do a lot of that. I practice that. But by career, I'm a trained psychologist, behavioral psychologist. I go to the lab. I read the deep, very difficult to understand at times research about what it means to be a human, where behavior comes from and what drives that. And I do research on better understanding how can we help people change their behaviors? How can we help them become more aligned with who they want to be? So I live my life right at the intersection of that. And then I get to come share with you how we implement that, how we actually make those changes. And so I'd like to share with you a story about how I came to this place, why I'm doing these different things in my life, and what led me to feel called to come here and to help serve you and really anybody who's out there trying to make change. I went through a really rough tragedy when I was a child. I had a very non-traditional childhood. You could consider me having a lot of developmental diversity compared to what the normal life looks like when you grow up. And One of the key foundational elements of my childhood was that there was constant chaos all around me. But there was one person in my life who protected me from that chaos. That person was my mother. My mom, Mary Mae Matthews, well, still to me the most beautiful woman I've ever met. She protected me from the chaos that was going on around me. And I won't go too deep into that, but you might be able to identify with what people often would call a broken home or a challenging home, where there was some drug use, there was some alcohol abuse in the home, and the consequences that come from that. They get really deeply embedded into the family. It becomes a very hard place to be. My mom protected me from all of that. I love my mom. I was a mama's boy. I spent every moment I could with her. I still to this day, that's like the one place I wish I could be, is in my mom's arms all the time. There's nothing that makes me feel safer. It makes me feel more like I matter than the thought of being in my mom's arms. Unfortunately, my mom got sick when I was very young with a chronic lung disease. And by the time I was 8 years old, a little third grader, my mom passed away. Now, I had spent about 2 to 2.5 years pretty much every day after school driving up with my grandpa to spend time with my mom. Sometimes it was in a hospital, sometimes it was in a nursing home. It was wherever she was at, where she was trying to heal and recover from this chronic lung disease. And what I learned as a kid, that leaves a huge imprint when every day you're going to what ended up eventually being the deathbed of my mother, the person who protected me. I watched that thing that protected me, that person, in my world, wither away when I was very young. And then when I lost her, that was my first dose of what people in the personal development world often call mortality motivation or mortality salience. I was aware of death. It became real to me that people that you love go away, that I will one day go away. And I remember when that happened, the day that my mom died, we were there, me, my two brothers, my father, we were in the hospital room. I remember saying goodbye to my mother. I remember walking up to the hospital bed. She couldn't speak. She was on all the machines. Scary, but I was used to it by then. And I walked up, and I remember what I said to my mom, because I saw this in movies, and I had heard this in stories. And I walked up to my mom, and I let her know. I said, "Mom, I'm going to be okay. You can go." Now imagine a little third grader saying that. Even when I think that to myself, I have a lot of empathy and compassion for little third grade me. Because, one, how did I come to be able to say something like that and to feel that way? But I just knew my mom was in pain. And I knew my mom, she needed to go. I don't even know if my family knows I ever said that. But that's what I said to her. And then I told her, "I love you." I went to sleep that night in a hospital bed right beside hers. And I woke up, probably about 1 or 2 in the morning maybe. And I woke up being carried out of the room by my older brother. I was over his shoulder. And I woke up in the elevator. And that's when I had the first hint, like, oh, we're leaving. And I knew my mom had passed. And I woke up that morning. My dad came into my room. He says, "Mark, your mom, she's not here anymore." And I started crying, and for the first time in my entire life, I saw my dad bawl his eyes out. And what I actually saw was my dad died that day too. His soul was inextricably linked to my mom's. He dedicated his whole life to her, and it was the one thing that kept him afloat. It's what kept him fighting. And he lost himself completely that day. And we cried together. My dad held me, and we cried together, and I've never had a more powerful moment than that moment that I had with my dad. It was magical. Truly magical. And so what happened after that is I walked outside. I picked up my headphones and I started listening to Eminem, because that was the person I identified with the most at that age. A very young person identifying with Eminem because his life looked similar to mine. I saw somebody who was full of emotional pain and anger and fear. And he put that to music, to a rhythm that gave you some sense of control while you were in that moment, that you were going to be able to contend with it. And I put those headphones on, and I walked outside, and I opened the door. And this was, I think, a Tuesday or a Wednesday afternoon, so everybody's at school, and I lived in a very small town, and so everybody was gone. The restaurant up the street wasn't even open yet. They opened in the afternoon. There was no one there. And I remember I walked from my front porch all the way up to the second street out in front of my house. So this was honestly maybe, about a block and a half. And I walked that whole segment of my little walk, and there wasn't a single car that passed. There wasn't a single person that I saw. It felt like the entire world was still, and I was the only thing in it. You think like a disaster movie, right? I was left completely alone. I really truly felt like there was nothing but me, and I was frightened. I was so dangerously scared that I really thought this was it, that the world had ended. My whole universe had just crumbled and crashed. And for a third grader, that's an overwhelming feeling. Finally, I got up to that next road, and I saw a car go by. And I snapped a little bit back to reality. And I realized I wasn't alone, the world wasn't ending. But in fact, the world was going to continue on. And I had to learn to live in it without my protector. Now, I spent a large portion, from third grade on until about high school, I spent my entire life looking for love. I craved it. That's what I really wanted, right? All I wanted was that same feeling I got when my mom hugged me. And so from that age on, I had a girlfriend. From fourth grade on, I had a girlfriend, or I always had a romantic interest. I became unbelievably motivated to have romantic relationships because that's the thing that makes you, right? That's what makes you feel that way. That same feeling. And so I could get that feeling that I needed from these cute little romantic relationships I'd have as a little grade schooler. And they were. But the thing is, these weren't the traditional romantic relationships that you have as a little kid. These weren't just like we hold hands, or maybe you kiss on the cheek, or goodness, you have a real kiss on the lips, and it's like, oh my gosh, right? I was fully devoted to my romantic partners at that time because I really knew they could go away. And so I was so scared, so I just pour myself. And that's the thing. Pouring myself into those relationships are the things that kept me afloat. They're the things that made me still want to go to school. They're the things that made me want to do good in school because I never wanted my person that I loved to be in that position that my mom was in. And I knew my mom was in that position because she was misguided and made a lot of terrible mistakes when she was young, leading to her to pass away when she was extremely young as well, before 50. And I was like, I would never let that happen to the woman that I love. And so I had these relationships, and I dedicated myself to these relationships. And that was my purpose. And finally, one day in high school, as I got a little bit older, and these relationships get more real, right? They become really significant. Then in high school, I met the first really deep love of my life. The first person I thought, for real, I would marry one day. And we started dating. I'll never forget, it was one of my friend's little sisters, and I met her for the first time, and we met at the park in my little town. And I'll never forget, she was there for a parade that went through this little town, and the first day I saw her, I just fell in love. My heart completely melted. I just felt the call to love her and to serve her and to be something great for her. And so I embarked on that relationship. And from that day on, I was committed. At the time, I had been doing some things that weren't so good. To be honest, I started doing the early stages of behaviors that got my parents where they had been. Freshman in high school, had started drinking a little bit here, doing some lower level drugs, if you will. And I was starting to party. I was starting to go down that life. I was living for the party too, because I was living for my friends, but I had started to fall down that trap that my parents fell down. Now I was moving away from school. I wasn't paying as much attention. And then this woman walked into my life, this young, at at the time, person that I thought I might be with forever. And from that moment on, was the day that I met her, I stopped all the drug use. I stopped the drinking. I stopped disengaging from school, and I fully committed to school. And I fully committed to the things that I knew would help me be better. Not for me, but for her. I subsequently went on, that relationship grew. We fell in love. It was beautiful. It was passionate. And I was fully in for her. And so that next year, I did the unthinkable. I got perfect straight A's in every single class that I had. I joined the high school basketball team, a sport that I liked, to get discipline and structure and to do what I thought could help me become a better person so I could start getting coach. I joined the National Honor Society, which to me was mind-blowing because my older brother, he had failed out of school, and my middle brother, he couldn't go to school because he had severe cerebral palsy, so he didn't really do that. For me, this was unthinkable. And all of a sudden, I tapped this amazing potential inside of myself. I tapped this spirit inside of myself that let me feel alive. And in every single thing that I did, I was fully dedicated to it. Not because I loved every single class that I was in, or because I loved running suicides every day on the basketball court. That's not why I did it. I did it because I loved this person. And I wanted to give her the best of me, and I wanted to give us the best life possible. And did everything I could to encourage her, to help her become that person as well. Now, as a young sophomore in high school, that is a lot of pressure to take on. But it's also a lot of meaning. It's also a lot of purpose. And so in that relationship, I saw the power of dedicating myself to something bigger than myself. That's what I did. And so what I found from that, we continued that relationship. It got really intense because my dad got sick with the same thing that took my mom. And he would later eventually pass very soon after that. But during that time, the person I was with, the love of my life, her mom adopted me in. She let me come stay with them. And so I was living with my love. I was really progressing life very fast at 16 years old. I had a car. I got a job at Taco Bell. I was working. I was killing it in school. I was doing these sports, and I was pouring myself into this person that I loved. But then something happened. My dad got much more sick. My oldest brother came in to try to take care of me and my other brother. He said, "You can't live with your girlfriend anymore." So that's not healthy. You're only 16 years old. So he pulled me out of that environment. Well, it turns out we had a very codependent relationship, and that really shook the foundation of our relationship because we were pulled away from each other. Long story short, mistakes were made, but later it turns out that she made a mistake, and she was unfaithful to me with my best friend, the person that I had been best friends with since first grade. And in my mind, who was my real brother. More of a brother than anyone else I'd ever had in my life. And this was a situation where, I had lost my mom. Yeah, in part due to mistakes she had made, but she didn't make the choice to go away. And in my mind, when this happened, I lost the love of my life due to a choice. And I couldn't understand how she could make that choice because I was living my entire life for her. At least in my mind, that's how I felt about it. And that was my purpose. And so it felt like my purpose betrayed me. That's what it felt like in that moment. And so I lost her. And I lost my best friend. And I lost myself entirely. I had no idea who I was anymore. And I felt not just as alone as I did that day that my mom had passed away, but this time I felt truly abandoned. And I internalized that as a truth. It wasn't the truth, but I internalized that as a truth about the way the world works, that the people I love will abandon me, and I'm not worthy of love, no matter what I do. And unfortunately, that has stuck with me, and it's been a very serious source of trauma and pain. For the next 3 or 4 months after that happened, I was completely despondent. I was working my job at Taco Bell, and they were very sympathetic of what had happened. But several times I would go to the back to do dishes, and I would just cry. And I mean, it's kind of funny, right? Like, I'm like sitting here, and it's not funny how it happened, but I mean, looking back, I'm like sitting back here washing pans at Taco Bell, and I'm just bawling my eyes out at work. And I was so torn that like the fact that other people could see me crying didn't even hit me. I'd go to work and I'd bawl my eyes out. I just start crying randomly. I was broken. And that bearing that who I was fully, that authentically, like who I was and how I felt to the world around me, it's funny because you'd think that that would be very scary to do, and it is, but I was so broken I didn't even care. The irony is those people then poured into me. They saw how broken I was, but they also saw that I was still trying to serve at Taco Bell. I was still trying to serve on my basketball team. I was still trying to go to class. I was trying to do all these other things. And people saw that, and so they started pouring back into me and lifting me up and helping me because I had been pouring into them. I'd been pouring into the teams. I'd been pouring into the class, into the teachers. I'd been pouring into my coworkers and my customers at Taco Bell. And now those people came to pour back into me. And I felt overwhelmed because I couldn't believe, how is it that these people who don't know, they're not my family, they're not obligated to love me. They're not obligated to serve me. They want to serve me more than anything else in the world. It means the world to them to help me, to uplift me. How do I get that? That's grace. That's the feeling that I got grace. And I remember day after day, what I would do every night is I'd cry myself to sleep, and I would take my headphones for my little MP3 player, and I would drive them into my ears. I would literally push them into my ears as far as I possibly could, so that I couldn't hear the world outside, so that there was nothing that could come in except this music, and I could be lost in the pain that I was feeling, and I'd be drowning and spiraling and screaming and yelling, even in my room, and just lashing out. Why is this happening to me? And one night in particular, I was doing this, and I was in so much pain, and I really, truly thought, this is it, just take my life. And I didn't want to do it. I was committed to staying there, but I wanted my life to be taken from me, because I just didn't feel like I had anything. I didn't know who I was. I thought I would never get better. And then I started praying out. And at the time, I had believed in a God. I had believed there's a higher power, but I didn't really have a connection. And that was the only thing I knew to reach to. And I said, God, help me. Tell me why. Why are you doing this to me? Why are you causing this pain for me? Why? Like, what did I do? And then I stood up, and I remember I looked right out this window in my room. I looked right out the window. I looked right at the moon. The moon was a full moon that night. It was shining right through. And I looked at it and I said, God, tell me what to do. And suddenly, I felt like I was lifted off the ground. Literally, like I felt like I was levitating. My whole body was numb and buzzing. And I felt like I was in this surreal experience. And it felt like God spoke to me. Now, I'm not saying that God did speak to me or that the higher power did. So maybe that happened and maybe it didn't. But I can tell you what I heard. I heard, live your life for me. And what that meant to me, in the way that I thought about God, was, live your life in the service of making sure no one else ever feels this way like you do now. That's what I heard. I heard, go make sure that you love people and you give them a love that will not only protect them from this feeling, but to make sure that they know there's at least one person in their life who genuinely loves and cares for them no matter what. They do not have to earn it. They do not have to be special. They do not have to, fight for it or contend with it or worry if it's going to go away. That I will love them no matter what. I learned the lesson of unconditional positive regard. To have a respect for each and every single person, to love them, even the worst of the worst people, to love their soul at least. And I dedicated my life to learning how to actualize that love. At 17 years old, that was my dedication. And every single year since, I have been working as hard as I possibly can to figure out how to actualize that love. And I'm going to tell you right now, my entire life changed from that moment on. I'm not going to lie, I've been through a lot of pain, I've been through a lot of tragedy in some ways, but at the same time, I have never felt purposeless. And every single time that I've encountered something that's very difficult to contend with, and there's been a lot, I've been able to latch onto this purpose, to feel that purpose in my soul, and to orient myself towards contending with the challenges in my life. I've been able to be resilient in my life. Now I'm about to, get a PhD in the next 2 years. All I have left is writing up my dissertation, and I'm just spending my time now doing more research on personal development, more research on identity, more research on how people can be better. And I get to do this right now. I get to have tools and bring them to you to help you out. And that's all the product of me being oriented towards this purpose. Now, why would I share that story with you? If you're with me now, probably 20-something minutes into this video, and you've listened to that, first, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. And also, thank you for taking the time, if you were able to do this, to relate my story to something you've gone through. I want to hear your story. I do. I mean that. I want to hear your story. I want to hear all the stories of people who've had these types of experiences with them, because these are how heroes are born. These are how modern day heroes are born, is that they face something that's extremely difficult and they find a purpose that is even more important than just feeling that pain. Something that makes them contend with it. Not push it away, not distract them from it, but contend with it, overcome it, face it, be able to embrace that aspect of who they are, aspect of their experience, and accept that fully so that they can integrate that and turn it into something powerful in the pursuit of their purpose. And so I want to hear your stories, because the more stories we share on this, the more honest and open and vulnerable we are with ourselves in going through this process. I'm going to tell you, I couldn't walk out and give you this story, right after it happened at all. I was broken. But after getting help and people constantly help me, I could do that. Now I want to hear yours, and I want to empower you to share that story, because I think the world needs it. And if you haven't contended with something at that level, that's fine too. What you might be contending with is complacency. What you might be contending with is having such a high level of comfort in your life because you haven't faced that yet, that seeking a purpose means overcoming that comfort. It means overcoming that, the satiation you get every day from your everyday life of abundance. And that's great if you're in that place. I want to give my kids that place. I want that to be my kids' problem. And we don't have to go through tremendous suffering, but some of us will inevitably. And so that's what I'm here to share with you, is that story. And you might say, well, Mark, okay, you told us at the beginning of this video that if we stuck with you, you're going to tell us the one thing about New Year's resolutions. You're going to tell us the one way to make a New Year's resolution that's going to be different than all the other years that I made that New Year's resolution. Well, I just showed you. You don't have to go through extreme tragedy to make that commitment to something bigger than yourself. You don't have to. The way to make a New Year's resolution isn't to say, I'm going to do X, Y, or Z thing so many times this year. I just saw the last New Year's resolution I saw someone put up was, I'm going to do 100,000 push-ups this year. It's like, those are great goals, but that's not a resolution. A resolution, to resolve something, is to commit to something no matter what. To say, I resolve that I will do X, Y, or Z thing. I resolve that I will love you. That I commit to. So how do you do this? I want to show you right now. First thing you're going to do is you're going to take out a piece of paper, or you're going to take out your phone. You can take out, whatever it is that you want, so you can write out 2 questions. You're going to ask yourself 2 questions. The first question you're going to ask yourself is who do I want to serve? And this can be people right now in your life. If you're a parent, this could be your children. This could be a spouse. This could be any romantic partner. This could be your best friend. This could be anybody, but this cannot be yourself in this case. In this case, it's not yourself. Pick someone outside of yourself. This could be God if you're spiritual. This could maybe be your cat, but I don't know if that's far enough. But I bet a lot of people might say that, well, that's the person I care about the most. And that's totally fine. But also know, it doesn't have to be somebody in your life right now. This could be my future family, if I'm so lucky to have them, right? Truth is, you actually start asking this question, you might get that family you want. This might be a future romantic partner. This might be a future person that you mentor one day. You could pick a person. It doesn't have to be a tangible person. I do this a lot. One of my number one motivators, one of the people I aim to serve the most, is my future family. Right now, I'm blessed to have a romantic partner. And so she kind of fits into that slot now. And so I think about her a lot when I ask these questions. That's what I'm thinking about for 2022. So I say, who do I want to serve? And you can choose that. For me, I'm choosing my future family. And you can write that down. You can say, for 2022, I want to serve my family. And you could go further with this. You could write some reasons why. You could write some things about your family if you wanted, but you don't have to. And then the next question you're going to have to say is, who do I need to become to do so? Now, obviously, you're probably serving your family at some level right now. So in this direction, you could say, well, how can I serve at a higher level? Maybe that means making a little bit less mistakes in certain areas of your life. Maybe that means adding a little bit more in your life, being a little bit more present in your life. There's going to be hows to this. But for right now, you got to say, who do I need to be to do so? And I suggest you pick a word. For me, the answer is disciplined. For me, that's what my future family really needs of me right now, is to be disciplined. And so I'm working on creating goals to be able to do that. I do programs that help me build discipline. And so that's the questions you ask right there, guys. You say, who do I want to serve? And you pick someone, or a few people. You say, who do I need to be to do so? Once you've answered those two questions, now you get to ask this resolution right here. You get to create your resolution. You get to say, I resolve to become more whatever it was you needed to be. I resolve to become more disciplined in the service of my future family, in the service of my romantic partner. Now that's a resolution that will give you direction, that will give you an aim. Guys, I hope that helps you when you think about this, and I want you to really spend some time with this. After you create that, let that sink in. It might hit you right away. You might feel a powerful surge of like, that is exactly what I want to do with 2022. That is exactly the aim I want to have in 2022. And remember, when you resolve this, you're saying, I'm going to do this no matter what. Whether this pandemic gets worse, whether there's a huge thing that comes my way, you got to account for those challenges. But I resolve to do this because this is my purpose. This is what I'm here for. I'm telling you, you make a resolution like this, you're going to find that goals are going to come to you, and you're going to plug those goals in. You're going to create a structure around doing this, and I'm going to be supplying you with plenty of ways to actualize this. But you're going to find those, and then you're going to actually do them, because you're starting to gain clarity about what you're actually trying to do on this planet, what you're actually trying to do with your time here, who you're trying to actually be. Guys, I love you so much, and stay tuned. I'm going to be linking a video to this very shortly. It's going to give you a full program that you can work to bring this resolution to life. And I'm very excited to bring that to you. It's something we've been working on for over 3 years, putting together the perfect kind of mix of personal development, the foundations of personal development to help you. Guys, if you like this video, if you enjoyed this story that I've shared with you, if this helped you in building your resolutions, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, because I'm going to be giving you more perspectives, more tools, and more stories. Some from me, some from friends, some from you, I hope. We're building a community of people who are empowering each other to live purposeful lives. It is my absolute pleasure to serve you, and remember, I am committed to serving you throughout 2022 and beyond. I love you, and I'll see you next time.